All right, this video is to show you how I'm going to make my peach tea little storage boxes, I guess. It's basically going to be the cover of an album with two boxes inside to store recipe cards or little booklets or cards, whatever. But let me give you the dimensions. The first part of the video is basically the cover. So if you're familiar with making covers using the lay flat method, that's exactly what I'm going to do to start. So you can skip to the next part if you're already familiar with this. So you're going to need the one piece that is 4 by 8. I can write that on here. You might want to have a notebook handy so that you can write down the measurements. So the chipboard is 4 by 8, and the paper that I'm using to cover it is 7 by 8. Okay, so that's for our spine piece. Then you're going to need 2 pieces for the front and back. These measure 8 by 8, the chipboard, and therefore the cover paper to wrap it is 10 by 10. Okay. Now on the back of your chipboard, you do want to have adhesive. I've already done one, so this is one of the covers. I still do my corners at an angle. You can either do it the way I do it, or you can cut out the square in the corner. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and take the 10 by 10. I'm using my 1-inch spacers. If you haven't got these from Country Craft Creations, oh, super helpful. They have smaller ones too now. Take off the backing. So by using these spacers in your scoreboard, you have a 1-inch border on all 4 sides. Once you place that, you want to burnish it. I'm going to go ahead and do the spine while I have my scoreboard out. So this is the 7 by 10 piece. Now you're going to need a 1-inch spacer and a 1.5-inch spacer. So the spines we do a little bit larger. I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off. If you have not made this type of cover, you don't want to wrap the spine quite yet. So don't work ahead if you haven't done this method before. We leave the long sides open. So I was piecing my score sheets I had left over instead of using one large sheet. You don't want to waste any of it. So this is pieced together. And go ahead and lay that down. So the spine piece, we do 1.5-inch sides instead of 1-inch sides. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish that. So I'm going to set this one off to the side and work with the cover piece. Now I already did one, so what I'm showing you for this one, you're going to do twice. Let's go ahead then, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to angle my corners. Now I have a tool to do that. You can just take your scissors and cut at an angle. If you do it, you do need to leave a little bit at the corner. Don't go straight to the corner. Leave about a 1/8 inch. If you are going to do squares, you can cut straight to the chipboard corner. So before I do the angles, let's go ahead and bring our chipboard up and over, and just kind of train that paper so it knows where it's going to go. And you're going to do that on all 4 sides. This is the artisan cardstock in white that I'm using. Once you use artisan cardstock, I don't think you're going to go back to regular. So some people like to cut out this square where the score marks overlap, and you can go straight to the corner. If you're doing the angle cut, you do not go to the corner. You leave a little bit of space. So let me show you with this tool. I'm guaranteed to always get the right amount cut off. This is how much is left. Not a whole lot, but there's enough that it will wrap that corner. So I'm going to do that to all 4 sides. Oops. And then we're going to place 1/4 inch score tape. I'm going to use a combination of the tape and the glue to make my cover. Put these away. We don't need those anymore. So using your 1/4 inch score tape, I put it around the perimeter of the chipboard and along the perimeter of the paper. And then I fill in with glue just so it has a nice smooth fit. Okay, so there we have on the chipboard and now on the paper. Then we'll go back and burnish it. We always like to burnish that so that when we lift the backing off the tape, the actual tape stays where it's supposed to. Now some people just use glue during this part, but I still like to use score tape also. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and burnish those strips. So the first thing people see is the outside, so you always want to make sure that this is the part that you spend the most time on and do the neatest job. So to get started then, we wrap one side and then we do the opposite side. So just pick, this is a square, so it doesn't matter which one you're doing first. For some reason, I like to do the long sides first if it's not, if the dimensions are different. Okay, so before I wrap this then, I want to take my glue and I want to put a line of glue up against the chipboard so that when the paper wraps around, we can smooth it out and it's a nice clean looking edge. I do fill in glue in between the chipboard and my score tape. I bring it up and over and I flatten that out and I burnish it. And then because I put that glue on the chipboard, when I smooth this out, it's very straight and very smooth. Okay, so I'm going to do the opposite side now. So the glue kind of breaks down the fibers in this paper. This is artisan cardstock, which does have some fibers, which does prevent cracking. Every once in a while you'll get, if you're in a cold area or a really dry area, if you're using the black, sometimes that will give you a little bit of a crack, but I haven't had a real issue. But every once in a while I'll just have to take a little bit of glue, put it on the paper and kind of smooth it out. But that's very rare and it's usually just in the winter time. And then smooth that side. So because I cut mine at angles, I have to tuck in this little excess. So I'm going to take my bone folder and push down and in so I flatten that excess. And then that will take care of that corner. And then I can go ahead and put my glue on. And I fill in here. I kind of put my fingers on those pieces that I burnished down so that they stay down as I bring that paper over. And then I burnish that one. If you have any excess glue, use a dry baby wipe to get rid of it. And now the last side. I'm going to go ahead and put the paper down in the corners. Push down and in. All right, and that's how easy. This method is really nice because you wrap the front and back separately, and it makes it, I think, go pretty fast. It's very easy. Okay, so then we have our front and back. Now when I say front and back, you can either choose to make your book so it opens this way, or you can have it standing and have your booklet open this way. And we'll get to that as we move forward on the construction. So now we're going to do the spine piece, which we do a little bit differently. So I am going to still go ahead and bring the chipboard, the paper up and over the chipboard and burnish it on all four sides. So some people have said, well, why do we use 1.5 inch sides on the spine instead of the 1 inch like the other? Because when we attach the book, the spine, when we attach this, it kind of covers this ridge, and so it just lays a little bit flatter. That's the only reason. All right, so I do mine by, I need scissors. The little rectangles in the corner, I'm going to cut at a diagonal so that I take off a triangle on all 4 sides. That gets rid of some bulk. All right. So this is what it looks like now. I only put score tape on top and bottom. And I am going to go ahead and put score tape on the paper top and bottom. And burnish that. So I'm going to also go ahead and burnish my paper the other direction too. It's just going to kind of help with the open and closing of our books. All right, so I'm going to take off the backing on one end. And I am going to put glue up against the chipboard just like we did on the front and back cover. And now I'm going to fill in glue to the score tape, but you also want to put glue on those little triangles on the corner. I'm going to put just a dab on the side of the chipboard so that that paper sticks nicely. I never used to do that, but I saw Sandy Trefker gave that suggestion, and it seems to be a good one, so I started using it. And then you're going to want to burnish it and make that paper lay down nice and flat. Okay. And you want to go ahead and do the edge just like we did the other so that it's nice and smooth. And now we'll do the opposite side. Then do your glue up against the chipboard and the paper in between the chipboard and that score tape and on the triangles on the corner. Put about 1/4 to 1/2 inch along the sides of the chipboard. Bring it up and over. We want it to lay nice and flat, so we're going to burnish it. Any excess glue, you can get a dry baby wipe. Sometimes I just use my hand. And let's go ahead then and do the edge. All right. So this connecting piece, we don't want it to stay level up at the top here. We need to angle it slightly so that as we put our book together, we don't see any paper sticking up over the covers. Okay. So I'm going to rest my scissors on the chipboard and cut just a sliver off at an angle. Not a whole lot. Can you see how much I took off? And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. So sometimes you're going to have to tip or turn the book upside down. And by resting your scissors on the chipboard, it does help to make sure you're cutting the right amount off and that you're not getting rid of anything that's going to cover the chipboard. But being as I make mine a little bit differently, we usually don't have a problem with the chipboard showing. All right, throw away my scraps here. I hate a messy desk while I'm working. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take my bone folder And on the finished side, just kind of go ahead and make that chipboard real defined by pushing the paper down around it with my scoring tool. So you'll see a definite ridge. Okay. Again, I'm going to use a combination of glue and the score tape. So I'm going to place 3 strips of the 1/4. The first one near the chipboard, I don't put right up against the chipboard. I'm going to go ahead and leave a little bit of a space. So that's about how much space. Okay. And then I'll put one at the end or the bottom. And then I place one in between the two. And then I fill in glue. That glue obviously it helps it with stick, but it also kind of gives me some wiggle room when I attach it. Do the other side the same way. Leave a little gap near the chipboard. Then we'll put 2 more strips on, bottom and center. Okay, so what we do then is we're going to be placing the covers right up against that chipboard. Well, I say right up against, but I'm going to leave just a hair of a gap so that when it folds, it lines up nice and neat. Okay, so what we do is we're going to be looking at the finished side up. I'm going to go ahead and turn this way. It's just easy. Well, we'll kind of play it by ear. I might not. I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off. And you don't want any overhang of that score tape. So if you have any hanging over, push it. Like I have just a little bit. I'm just going to bring that up and over. Oops. Okay, so now is where I'm going to fill in some glue. So I'm going to put it in between the score tape. And I am going to do a fine line up at the top where that score tape is. Use your scoreboard to help keep everything still. Go almost, like I am pretty much almost exactly to that chipboard. There's just a hair of a space. Just a hair, not much at all. And then you're going to want to turn it over and burnish it. And see, by using that 1.5 wing, it does cover that paper. And so it just has a smoother appearance. Let's go ahead and do the other side now the same way. I've already got my score tape, so let's take off the backing. And then we'll add our glue. Again, if you have any hanging over the edge, tuck it over. So glue in between the score tape, and then just a fine line at the very top of that piece of score tape at the top. And almost to the chipboard, just a hair of a space. Turn it over and burnish. Okay. So when I cover my spine, I usually still use the artisan cardstock. Some people use the pattern paper, but I'm always afraid it's going to crack. So I use this to cover, and then I put a strip of the pattern paper on top so that it doesn't go in the creases, so that I don't get any cracking. So this piece is 7.5 across and 7 7/8 tall, and we're going to center it. And by making it 7.5, again, it's going to cover these wings so that there's a flatter appearance and feel to it. I ran out of score sheets, so I put on 1-inch strips. I have used glue in the past, and it did not work well at all on this spine piece. It did get rippled and buckled, and you could see lines, and oof, it really bothered me, and it didn't lay as flat. So I always use score tape on this part, and you want full coverage, so it's going to get a lot of wear and tear because it's opening and closing of the book. I have a little overlap there. And I'm going to have to add just a hair of glue on that corner because I didn't get tape on it. So right here, when I was cutting my tape, it didn't go right there. Okay, so we want 7.5 going across, 7 7/8 up and down. Center it, top and bottom, left and right, and flatten that down. I'll give it a really good burnish. And then I'm going to kind of crease. I'm going to fold the front and back cover up and kind of push with my scoring tool that paper down into the crevice here, the space between the spine and the front and back cover. Doing it gently. Okay, now some people bring it all the way over and burnish it flat. It always makes me nervous, but ooh, you can do it if you left a little bit of that space like we said. All right, so this is our beginning. Again, you can either have your project this way so that you open it and you'll have a box here and here, or you can have it this way and your boxes will still be in the same spot. It's just the whatever orientation you want it to be. We're going to end up having a tie closure around so it will stay closed, but that is how a basic cover to get started. And then now we'll go on to these smaller boxes that are going to go here on each side. After you have the cover made, you're going to want to go ahead and cover it. So my box container is going to be like this, so it's going to open the opposite of an album. So you're going to have to remember that with the direction of your paper. Because this is 8 by 8, this is 7 7/8 by 7 7/8 for the paper. Spine 3 7/8 by 7 7/8, and then on the back, the only difference, I still made these 7 7/8 by 7 7/8. This I did 4 inches though, because you will have room to do the full 4 inches on the outside. Again, it's directional, so you do have to make sure that you put your paper on correctly. So the next thing you're going to want to do is make the 2 boxes that we're going to attach. So let me show you what one of them looks like I've done so far. So the box is going to be attached to the cover, and when you open it, this will be attached. But I'm going to put a handle of some sort to make it easier to open this flap up. But to reinforce it, I used Artisan, but then I went inside and I also used some lightweight chipboard that I covered for the 2 sides and the bottom to make it more durable. I didn't do it on this top flap. I didn't think it was necessary. So I still haven't glued this, and I still haven't done any decorating. There is enough space with that 4-inch spine. There is space for me to add a little bit of dimension, like the flowers I made. There'll be some room that I can decorate and have a little bit of depth to it. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. Again, you're going to want to have paper to record or write down the measurements. We're going to start off with our 12 by 12 paper, and we're going to do some scoring. And I need my scoring tool. Okay. So let me go ahead and give you those measurements. So on one of the 12-inch sides, you're going to score at 1/2. Oh, shoot, that went way off. Okay, I need to clean this off. Hold on. Okay, so I score at 1/2. I'm going to score at 2 inches. I'm going to score at 10 inches. And I'm going to score at 11.5. Go ahead and rotate your paper. So now we have the other 12-inch side across the top. You're going to score at 1/2, 2 inches, go to 9, and go to 10.5. Okay. So on this side, there was a little bit of a difference. 1/2, 2, 9, 10.5. Okay. So we're going to do some cutting, and this is what we're going to look for. This is how we're going to end up cutting it. Just to kind of give you a visual here. That's where we're headed. Okay. So the top of the box is the one that has the 2 larger scores at the top. Okay, that's the top of our box. The one at the bottom of our box is the 1/2 inch score, and then the 1.5 inch score, which was 2, but it measures 1.5 inches. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some cutting. So I'm going to start at the top of my box, but I'm going to turn it to so that it's facing me. Okay, so I need to cut out these 2 little rectangles on the outside edge and the 2 squares on the inside, so that we get rid of a total of 4. So let me cut it out, and then I'll show you. I'm going to cut on that outside of that score mark so I don't have any bumps. Okay, no, I don't like that. So this is the top, and I've taken off all 4 of the outside. They're not squares, but rectangle and squares. So there's a total of 4 here. Okay, can you see that? So we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Take out all 4 of those outside, the squares and the rectangles. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Now, to help me, I'm going to go ahead, while I remember, I'm going to go ahead and corner around this part right here, and I'm using the We Are Memory Keepers, and I'm going to use the 10, I think is what I used on the last one. Okay. So now we're going to do the bottom section, and I'm going to have you cut out the rectangles, the square, and the rectangle. So on the left-hand side, there's a rectangle with a square under it, and then there is a rectangle to the right. So it's kind of like we're cutting out the letter L. So let me show you. Okay, so we cut out that letter L. Do the same thing on the other side. Cut out the 2 rectangles and the square in the corner. But now it's a backwards L. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Now we do need to make 2 tabs. So I'm going to have you cut up. We still have 2 little squares in the corner. We're going to cut up on that score line, and I'm going to taper it on both sides by taking off a little triangle. Oops. Okay. Now I don't want my tab quite that long, so I'm just going to snip about a 1/2 inch off. Oh, there we go. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Cut straight on the score, just on the outside. Angle it to cut out a little triangle on each side. And then I cut about a 1/2 inch off, like so. Now I do want to miter the long rectangular 1/2 inch strip on the bottom and on the top, just slightly. On the bottom, slightly taper that 1/2 inch on each end. And I'm going to turn it one more time, and I'm going to slightly miter that 1/2 inch at the top and the bottom. So that's what you have. Let me get rid of my scraps, and we'll do some burnishing. So go ahead and burnish your score marks. Okay, so I've done all my burnishing. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the lightweight chipboard prepared. So you're going to need one piece that is 1 3/8 by 7 7/8. I'll say that again. It's 1 3/8 by 7 7/8. And you're going to need 2 pieces that are 1 3/8 by 6 7/8. Just 2 of those and 1 of these. They're all 1 3/8 wide. This one is 7 7/8. These are 6 7/8. Go ahead and place adhesive on the back. Now the bottom piece that's going to go on the bottom of the box, I'm going to wrap with just white artisan, and I only need a 1/2 inch border on the sides. So this actually measures about 9 by 2 3/8. It does not have to be perfect. Okay, so I'm going to use my 1/2 inch spacer to kind of help me lay this out. And I need another 1/2 inch. Well, I guess I can put it up here, that's fine. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off. And I'm going to lay it on my white artisan, and then I'm going to wrap it just like it was the cover. Okay. Now this end is a little bit longer. That's not a big deal. This is a 1/2. This is probably about 3/8. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish that. And then just like the cover, you bring it up and over and you burnish. Do that on all 4 sides to train the paper. Like I said, this is to give your box more stability and make it more durable. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to angle my corners, and I'm going to leave just a little bit of excess at the corner, so I'm not going to go straight to the corner. I'm going to leave a little bit, and I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. Leaving a little bit of extra so that the corner will be covered. Okay, I am going to go ahead and place 1/4 inch score tape, and I'm just doing it on the outside of my paper. I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. I'm not going to do it on the chipboard also. You don't need all that extra. It works just fine just doing it on the paper for this. So it's going to be glued to the bottom of the box. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and just burnish that to make sure that it sticks. Starting with my long side then, let's go ahead and take off the backing. And we're going to put some glue up against the chipboard. Now this is lightweight chipboard. It's not the heavyweight. It's like the cereal box. And then bring that up and over and burnish it. And just like before, you want to go ahead and do the edge. And I'm going to do the other long side. Add your glue. So the information I'm giving you is for 1 box. You are obviously, well, if you're doing it like I am, I'm making 2 boxes. So you would double everything. Now for this next part, remember, if you angled your corners like I did, we need to get rid of that excess by pushing it down and kind of to the inside on all 4 corners so that your corner piece is covered when we bring that edge paper over. I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing and add my glue. Okay. So this is a little bit thinner and shorter than the actual box, and we want that so that it fits neatly when we put the box together and it doesn't overlap with the side pieces. And I'll show you how I want you to adhere these just to make sure that you're doing it correctly so that it lines up nice and neat. Okay, so you need, that's your 1 long one. And again, in our box, that's the piece that's down at the bottom. Now you'll notice that I did use pattern paper on the sides. You don't have to. I just had some, and so that's, and it, I don't know, I don't think you'll see that much inside the box. I did not put any pattern paper on the large section. Like I'm leaving this empty on the inside. So then your 2 smaller pieces of chipboard, you do the same exact way. This time though, I am going to use pattern paper. And so if our lightweight chipboard is 1 3/8 wide, you want to make it 2 3/8. And because this is 6 7/8 long, you'll want to make your paper 7 7/8 inches. So I made it 1 inch larger on the width and the height. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and use these 1/2 inch border pieces to help me line it up correctly. And you just do it the same way. Now, this is the pattern paper, so if you're in a really dry area, you might get a little bit of cracking or splitting. I did not. But I know that anytime you use pattern paper, at least I have found a lot of the pattern paper, it will kind of give you a cracked look. And so that's why I always wrap with artisan and then put my pattern paper on top. Okay, so I'm going to do that this is directional paper, so this is my side, so I want to make sure that I have my wreath go in the right direction. Okay, so I'm going to do the other one, the other ones just like this one. I'll bend it up and over, angle the corners, and glue. All right, so here are the two lightweight chipboard pieces for the sides, and here is the one for the bottom. Let's set those off to the side. We're going to go ahead and decorate our box before we put it together. So on the outside, these measurements are going to be 7 7/8 inches wide and 6 7/8 inches tall. So you'll need one of those. And then you'll need two side pieces that are 1 3/8 by 6 7/8. And then you'll need a top and a bottom that are 1 3/8 by 7 7/8. And you need that for each box. Okay. So I went ahead and did the outside of the box first and just glue them, and make sure you watch those score lines. Remember, this is the top, the one that has the two wide sections, wider. And just go ahead and glue and place them. We are, like I said, going to put some sort of handle on that top to make it easier to open and close. But watching your score lines, don't go over. Center those. And the bottom one, you're not going to see that much, but I still put a piece of paper on the bottom. Okay. Again, your sides are directional if you're using directional paper. This is not directional paper. So I'll glue these two on the side. And here is my center. And here is my top. And I don't put anything on this flap that gets tucked under. Okay. All right, once you have your paper on the outside, we're going to work on the inside, and that's with our covered chipboard pieces. You're going to want to put the bottom piece on first, but before we do that, we want to tuck in these tabs and bring them in and bring the bottom up to form a corner. Okay, so I'm going to place glue on one flap at a time. Bring it up and have it meet the bottom piece and hold on to it and let it dry. You can use clothespins. Does that reach? Yeah. Okay, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. So go ahead and place glue on your tab. Bring it up and over, not over, but up. So look at your corners real well so they line up nice and neat. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish. Okay. All right, so we're going to place the white longer piece down here at the bottom, and you do want to put it as close to the, you want to push it down into that corner and try and equally space it. They'll have just a hair of a gap on each of these ends. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, because remember we're gluing this 1/2 inch to the cover. So we don't want the chipboard piece to get in the way or bump into it. So that's why I'm pushing it all the way into the back here. But do watch your sides and try and center it so you have the same amount of space on each side. I'm just going to use glue. Okay. And I'm going to lift it up so I can see. And it it looks like it's pretty much, there we go. Go ahead and burnish that so it stays in there. It lays down flat. So it doesn't get in the way. I can still fold up that 1/2 inch and it's fine. So now the side pieces, you're going to push all the way down to this bottom piece. So it should go exactly to the top of your box. And you don't see it. Okay, it should go all the way to the top without going over, and it's tucked all the way down to the bottom. And that should work out perfectly so that there's no overhang. And that keeps the sides real strong. It won't let it collapse on you. All right, I'm going to put mine on the side so I can see. And again, if your paper is directional, make sure you're putting it on correctly. Push it all the way to the inside again. Okay, and I need to burnish that so it lays down flat. And now I'm going to do the other side. Okay. Again, push it all the way down to the bottom and up against. There we go. It should not hang over at all. And burnish it so it stays. And again, you can use your clothespins. I'm going to use. All right. So I'm not going to do the decorating until I have them connected to the box. So while this is drying, let's go ahead and work on attaching this to our cover. So the box should be pretty much the same width as your cover, but it is shorter, so you'll have a little bit of space up there. Okay. I think we better put the tab on first before we glue it. So I'm going to look to see if I have a metal piece that I can, like a little metal handle that I can glue on. If you don't, you could punch a hole and maybe put an eyelet in and then put some ribbon and tie a knot so it doesn't come out. You might just use, I don't know, a flat back, maybe you have a pretty big flat back pearl of some sort or some sort of embellishment. But I'm going to go searching through mine and see if I have like a handle, and I'll glue that on before we attach it to our box or our album. I adhered one box, and this is the pull that I used to help open and close it. I just had one in my stash. And so now I'm going to show you how to attach it to the box. Now when you open it, notice that this bottom is not attached to your spine. Okay, so I'm going to turn this the other way around. So the first thing I want to do is attach these corners so that they stay together, and I'm going to put the sides on the bottom and then put the bottom 1/2 inch on top of them. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue, just a little, and put those together and hold it for a second. Okay. And now place glue on the 3 1/2 inch sides. Okay, so now I'm going to put the lid so it's kind of coming out towards me, so it's open. I'm going to bring up the back cover. I'm going to set the box down on the bottom of the base of my cover, and then I'm going to look to make sure the sides line up with the book. Okay, I'm going to kind of push, and then I got to flip it around. And if you have a long, like I have this, I can also get my hand in there to push those 1/2 inch pieces down. And I'm going to use my hand for the bottom. Okay, I'm going to tuck that lid in. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Now, the closure I'm going to use, you can either use a ribbon or you can use a belly band, which I'm thinking I might do a belly band and then have a shaker on the front. I think that's what I'm going to do. Now, you'll notice that there's a little bit of space. If you want, you could put like a little loop to hold a pen in between there. It's up to you. Okay, so that should be your boxes. Put on your, I'm going to take a little bit of time and still push down those 1/2 inch sides. And then the only thing I'm going to do next with you is the closure, and then I'll do decorating off screen. My final decision was to make a belly band that had a bow and a little bling in the center rather than the shaker. I had a die for this, and it was the large one, so I thought that looked pretty good. I'll show you the end project here in just a second, but let's go ahead and make the belly band. Now this can be a little, not hard, but when you're wrapping thin chipboard and you have a long strip, it's going to be a little bit, you got to work with it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead, and I have 2 1/8 inch pieces, and I have 2 12 inches, so 2 1/8 by 12. I have 2 of those. And then this one's 2 1/8 by, I don't know, how long is that? About 4 inches. Because you want this to be close to 27 inches long. So this is like how we used to wrap our covers, and so I need to connect these papers. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue, and then I'm going to connect those. So I just have a little bit of glue there, and I want to line that up. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to end up wrapping it around the chipboard. So if it doesn't line up exactly right, it should still be okay. Okay, and then it's just a little bit of an overlap. I'd say probably about, 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and connect the last pieces. Okay, now you do want to put adhesive on the back of your lightweight chipboard. So I did the chipboard exactly the same width and length as my book, because we're going to have spaces in between the chipboard, so that will expand it a little bit. So this chipboard is 1 1/8 by 8, and you're going to need 2 of those, and go ahead and put your adhesive on the back. These are 1 1/8 by 4, and you need 2 of those. So it doesn't matter what you start with, the 8 inch piece or the 4 inch piece. I'm going to go ahead and start with the 8 inch. You want to make sure that when you lay this out that you're connecting where the 2 pieces of paper connect, that you don't have that end of chipboard right there. So mine will overlap it just a little bit. Let me show you. So here's where my, I don't know, can you see that? This is where I have the overlap of paper. I don't want my chipboard to be right there, right where it connects. I don't want that. I want it to go over where it connected. That light, that's really hard to see. Okay, I want it to go over. So think about that as you're laying this out. So there should be about a 1/2 inch border, and you can use your scoreboard to help you. I'm just going to kind of use this as my guide, and I'm going to have a little bit more than a 1/2 inch on this end. So just go ahead and start. You're going to alternate 8 inch, 4 inch, 8 inch, 4 inch for your pieces. And we're going to have about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch gap in between our chipboard pieces. And this is the lightweight. So this is a 1/2 inch spacer just so I can kind of eyeball where to place it. And you'll notice I do have a little bit more than a 1/2 inch there, and that's fine. So now I want about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to actually use my spacer as my guide to know where to put the next piece. If you don't give enough space, you will have, when you put it on your book, it'll kind of push your book together a little bit at the top. It's not a book, I guess, it's a box, but okay. So now I have 2 of the 1/2 inch spacers, so to help me, I might use both, lay one down so I can kind of tell where I need to place, and then I can kind of hold this here just to kind of get a rough idea as to where to place this. And if it's not perfect, it's still going to work. So let's go ahead now and do another 8-inch piece now that we've done the 4-inch. Now you can use regular paper and not put chipboard, but I don't know if that's going to be very durable or very strong for this box. So I think lightweight chipboard is probably the best way to go. And then you do need to put your last 4-inch piece on. And again, where I connected that small piece of paper, I should not, my chipboard goes over that connection. It doesn't butt up to it. It won't be as strong that way. I just had my, there it is. And I'm taking the backing off. Now I also, when I made my original belly band, I just put pattern paper on the outside, not the inside. Sometimes when you put a little extra paper on the inside, it does get a little bit thick, but we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to eyeball this one just to show you you don't have to have those spacers. All right. So I will have to trim a little bit off the end of this paper, but I'd rather have to trim it than not have enough. So I'll just kind of eyeball that. All right, so you do need to bend your paper so that it knows where it needs to go when we wrap it. So I just bring the chipboard up. And then now I'm going to kind of bring it over and flatten it. That'll make it easier when we're ready to put our adhesive on. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other side also. Just kind of train it first. Just bring it up and over. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring it all the way down here. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish that. Now you can use score tape, you can use glue, you can use whatever you want. I should probably do the ends too. Okay. So you can use score tape, you can use glue. I'm going to go ahead and kind of use a combination of the two, I think. So this time I'm just going to put the score tape on the paper. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and miter first just so I don't waste any score tape. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this at an angle. Remember, you need a little bit, not all the way to the corner. So it's going to make this really narrow at the end. Okay, so I have that end. I'm going to do that to the other side, mitering the corners, but don't go all the way to the corner of the chipboard. Leave a little bit so it covers. Okay, not perfect, but it'll work. Now I'll put my score tape on the chipboard, not the chipboard, I'm going to do it on the paper only. And then I'll use glue on the chipboard. And it's going to be a long piece. I can't really get all of it in the camera. And you're going to want to burnish that. And I'm going to go ahead and do the other long side, and I don't think I'm going to do the short side, so now when you're working with something this long, it is kind of hard sometimes not to get some bumps and ripples in your paper, so we have to be careful. All right, I do have different colors of lightweight chipboard if you haven't noticed. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put glue up against the chipboard just like if it was a cover, because we want the paper to stick to the edges and have a smooth edge. Okay, and if you want to add a little bit on the inside in between the chipboard and the score tape, you can. All right, I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to kind of push up and out so that I don't get any ripples. Oh, geez Louise, I got to take the backing off the score tape. I did that on my first one too. What am I thinking or not thinking? Okay, let's try that again with no backing. Up and over, and then kind of push up and out so that you get a smooth wrap. See, I don't have any ripples on this side. Kind of go up and out. And no ripples. Nice. Let's do the other side. I'm going to put the glue up against the chipboard. Oop. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off. Maybe. Starting in the center, bring it up and over, kind of push up and out. I have a little bit of a ripple here, so I got to work with that a little bit, up and out. Just right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burnish that real well, try and get it smoothed out. Let's go ahead and turn it over. You don't see any ripples, so that's good. Go ahead and kind of do the sides. Okay, now we do want to train our paper, so we're going to bend it where the paper in between the two pieces, there's a little gap. Let's kind of fold it up in that gap. If you see any places that need some additional glue because it's not laying down, go ahead and do that. I saw one spot. Okay, so that will be our belly band. Now you'll notice that we haven't done the two ends. One of the ends you can close. So I'm going to go ahead and tuck in the extra excess on the corners, and then I'll just use glue here on the whole end, and I'll bring that up and over. Now you can attach this piece to the inside or to the outside. I'm going to do the outside so that it has that smooth corner. I am also going to place paper on the inside. You can choose to do white, or you can choose to do your pattern paper. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my papers. Now, I'm using the Prima paper. If you're using something really thick, being we're bending it, it might crack, so be careful. I'm going to go ahead and try to put the Prima on. It's going to have, if I do that though, I have 8-inch pieces. You know what, I'm just going to do white. So I'm going to get a 1-inch strip and keep putting it along the inside. So starting here, and then 1 inch. So I'm just going to cut paper 1 inch wide and see how long it needs to be. It's probably going to be about, let me see. We'll probably need about, there's 15, about 24.5 inches long. So you'll have to cut a couple strips that are 1 inch wide. I cut my paper 1 inch wide. I have a 12-inch piece, a 7-inch piece, and a 6-inch piece. Now the reason why I did that is because I want to make sure that the paper again goes over these gaps and that the white paper does not end in the where the two pieces of chipboard connected. So it worked best if I did 7, 12, and 6. Okay, so I'm going to start with my 4-inch piece down here, and I have the 7-inch strip, and you can choose to glue or you can choose to tape. You know, I was going to glue it, but I'm going to go ahead and tape the outsides, and I'll put glue in the center. I want to make sure it lays down nice on the edges. I don't want it coming up, and to me that score tape helps with that. All right, so let me take the back off the score tape on the outsides, and I left the inside empty for right now. I'm going to put glue in there. Come on. And I'll just put a light amount of glue on the inside. So it's like that. Score tape on the outside, glue in the center. The end that is closed, I'm going to go ahead and place it close to the edge on the right. I'm going to center it in the inside. And then I'm going to burnish that down. Now I'm going to do my 12-inch piece because that will, I'm only going to overlap about an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do the score tape on the outside, glue in the center, and then I'm going to end with the small piece. And when you lay this, you don't want it to go past the chipboard. So it should not go over. So I have it at the very end of the chipboard. Okay. So it would be easiest if you did your pattern paper on the other side before you connect your pieces, connect the ends. Now there is one piece that you're not going to cover until you put the book together. So or the belly band, when I put this together, I'm gluing mine to the outside. So I can't put pattern paper on this section yet, but I can do the other sections. So I would do 1 inch wide. I cannot tell you how long. You're going to want to leave spaces. See how I did not go, I have spaces. I can't really tell you how long to put your paper because it depends on what your spaces were in between your chipboard. So go ahead and put on your pattern paper. Now, I'm not going to because I already have one made, but then you're going to connect this and decide, do you want to glue it to the outside or to the inside? I'm going to glue mine to the outside so it has a smooth edge just like all the other ones. I'm going to use the art glitter glue. And you want to make it as tight as you can so it makes a nice corner. So I'm pushing down to make sure that those edges are nice. Okay. Now, if you're going to be using this a lot with having it open wide, you may not want something that's this dimensional on your belly band. You might want something flatter. So what you would do then is you would put this on the top and bring it down to about there. Okay, so it pushes mine in just a little bit, but I'm okay with that. All right, so let me show you how I ended up decorating. So this is the front of the box. I have flowers in the corner. I have cutouts with some of the flat back, what is it called? The crystals for the Prima. But that's all I did. And that's not very much for me because usually I decorate a lot more than that. So then when you open it, I plan on using mine a lot where it's open all the way. So on one side, again, I put some flowers. There was enough space in between the two boxes that we could do that. And I put more of the, as accents, I put more of the crystals. I have a tag with some ribbon. I have some of the ephemera. And that's all. I didn't want to go too crazy. And on the other side, I mimicked it. It's just I have different ephemera. Okay, so I still have the crystals, the flowers, tag. And then you can store things inside. Oh, I do have something in here right now. It could be a gift box where you have stationery. These are actually sachets. But you can put that in there. You could put notebooks in there. You could put envelopes. It's whatever you want. And that's why I said you could put a pen in here because there is enough space. So if you wanted to put a loop, you could. Notice I put cut some of the paper design out and put it on the top. This is what I ended up using for my closure, those little metal knobs. Okay, so that is what mine looks like. Let me put my final belly band on so you can see what it looks like. That's what it looks like when it's put together. So it's really, I think, a cute way to give a gift, and it's nice for decoration too. So let me know if you have questions. Hopefully it was pretty easy to follow. Again, I don't put the measurements down in the description box because I go over them while I make it. And, you know, in order for this to be a free tutorial, I want to make sure that I can get the time in to do all these projects. And with a full-time job, remember, that's sometimes hard to do. So please make sure when you watch my tutorials that you have a notebook and pen or pencil. And hopefully that's easy enough for you to follow along with. And thank you so much, you guys. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. And I'm going to continue to do some free tutorials for you for Country Craft Creations. Thanks so much.